Chapter 11. New Thought, Theosophy, and Christian Science. And now we are brought to a consideration of a phase of modern thought which has attracted much attention from observers of the signs of the times. This phase combines within itself the elements of religion, metaphysics, and philosophy, although the orthodox authorities in each of these fields of thought will likely insist that the words quasi or pseudo be placed before each of these respective terms when so used. We allude to that peculiar manifestation of the modern mental and spiritual unrest, which, under its manifold forms and names, may be generally termed the New Thought. It is true that we group under this heading several schools and sects which indignantly repudiate that particular term, but, nevertheless, we believe that the said term may be properly applied to all of this class of thought for the purpose of general classification, leaving the various elements to fight out for themselves which of them are orthodox and which otherwise. No other term applies so well to this particular manifestation of modern thought and speculation. It combines within itself the elements of many phases of theology, religion, metaphysics, and philosophy, and yet is different from any and all of them. That is, the peculiar combination and application is different. New thought is sui generis, unique, of its own kind. In itself, it is incapable of definition. It is known only through its various manifestations. In the first place, new thought is new only in its present combination. Its respective elements are as old as religious, metaphysical, and philosophic thought. It represents a new turn of the kaleidoscope of speculation. The old elements are merely grouped in new form. Perhaps this idea may best be described by the apropos, although somewhat flippant, verses hereto appended, which have been going the round of the newspapers and magazines, including several devoted to the subject of new thought itself. The author, whose name is unknown to me, breaks into descriptive verse as follows. Take a page of Epictetus and a Plato paragraph. Shake it briskly till the mixture makes the gentle scoffers chaff. Add a slight Socratic flavor, not an excess of a dram, and a weak solution formed of Persian epigram. Mix a bit from old Confucius and from Buddha several drops. Add Egyptian lore found in the Pyramid of Great Chiefs. Now some truths not half remembered and some others half forgot. Boil the mixture, boil it briskly, till it simmers in the pot. And, Lord bless you now, my brother, and the skeptical all be shrew, can't you see that you're approaching the thought that's labeled new? It is thought, I said with reverence, much of which is very true. But, if I do not displease you, what in thunder makes it new? Came the answer. Lo, poor skeptic, hear the truth and doubt no more. Such a mixture's mixful mixing never has been mixed before. Perhaps we may get a clearer idea of the nature of the new thought if we will consider two of its leading direct sources, both of which, by the way, indignantly disclaim all relationship with and inclusion in the new thought. These two direct sources, through which has flowed the older waters of many ancient schools of thought are, respectively, Theosophy and Christian Science. Theosophy, in the modern application of the term, was a school of thought founded in 1875 by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, the theories and teachings of which were promulgated by the Theosophical Society founded at that time. The society has since had a varied experience, with several schisms and separations. Its teachings, however, have spread so far beyond its own organization that, today, Theosophy is regarded more as a general teaching than as the particular belief of the society or of its divided schools. The sources of the Theosophical doctrine are various, principal among which, however, are the teachings of the ancient Greek mystics and the Buddhists, these two being ingeniously blended and commingled in the fundamental beliefs of the group. The following three fundamental propositions of Theosophy are gleaned from the writings of the founder. 1. An omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. 2. The eternity of the universe in toto as a boundless plane, periodically the playground of numberless universes incessantly manifesting and disappearing. 3. The fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root, and the obligatory pilgrimage of every soul, a part of the oversoul through the cycle of incarnation in accordance with cyclic and karmic law during the whole term. No privileges or special gifts are possessed by man save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit throughout a long series of reincarnations. Upon this superstructure, a great edifice of dogma and speculation has been built. Theosophy explains everything in the heavens above, the earth beneath, and the waters under the earth, to the satisfaction of its followers, all worked out in detail and capable of diagramming and blackboard demonstration. Prominent in its teachings, we find the detailed theories regarding clairvoyance, telepathy, secondate, spirit return, astral bodies, etc., and particularly the favorite New Thought doctrine that thoughts are things, and that it is possible to influence another by one's projected thoughts, even though great distances intervene. The earlier theosophical books, as well as the later, have many references to this power of thought, and the New Thought undoubtedly received many of its ideas on this subject, directly and indirectly, through Theosophy. Prentice Mulford, a writer of the early 1880s, did much to popularize theosophical ideas and conceptions, and was a direct connecting link between Theosophy and the New Thought, his favorite axiom, "Thoughts are things," having become quite a slogan of the latter. The theosophical doctrine of reincarnation and karma have found much favor among many of the followers of New Thought, although others rejected and favor the idea of a spiritual progression from plane to plane, higher and higher, toward the one divine principle. Its pantheistic ideas are also very apparent in many of the several groups of the New Thought movement. It must be noted, however, that Theosophy has had but little to say regarding healing of physical ills by mental and spiritual power, so the New Thought is not under obligations to it for this part of the latter's working creed, this feature having been derived from other sources. Christian Science, the most successful of any of the groups which are grouped under the general term of New Thought, was founded by Mary Baker Eddy in the 1860s, although it did not rise into popular favor for many years after that time. Whether or not Mrs. Eddy received her inspiration from Dr. P. Quimby, as some claim, is outside the matter of the present consideration. Whatever may have been the history of her start in the movement, the fact is indisputable that the Christian Science of today is the result of her own energy, ability, and judgment, and she is justly entitled to her claim of founder and actual promoter of the movement. Without Mrs. Eddy, Christian Science would not be known as it is today. The Christian Scientists hold that no one not a member of their organization can have sufficient knowledge of its principles to explain them or even intelligently discuss them. This may be so, and the best I can do is to present for your consideration the fundamental principles of Christian Science as they seem to be upon careful inquiry. It would seem that Christian Science is based upon the fundamental idea of the existence of an omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient principle of being, known as God, the divine individuality of which, or whom, can be discerned only spiritually and supersensibly, and which cannot be cognized by mortal mind, or the so-called material senses. God is held to be life, truth, love, spirit, and the divine principle of all true being, and the sole creative principle, cause, origin, source, basis, foundation, government, and law of all that has actual and permanent existence. God is also held to be the sole substance, that is, that the divine spirit mind is the only actual, immortal substance or reality. The divine mind is held to be conscious only of good, spirit, life, and health, and does not create or consent to any form of evil, sin, sickness, death, or matter, which instead are held to be errors of mortal mind, abnormalities and monstrosities, the negation of truth, the paraphernalia of an ignorant and depraved sense of existence, which are but relative qualities, and both of which fear, sin, superstition, ignorance, and an erroneous philosophy, mortal mind, in short, are held to constitute the primal cause of the degradation which has involved the human race in mortality, which, however, is, may be, and will be, overcome by the knowledge of the truth which is in Christian Science. It will be seen at once, by those who have followed us in the preceding chapters, that the fundamental principle of Christian Science is essentially idealistic. It partakes of the nature of the conception of Bishop Berkeley, but in many ways is nearer to the idealism of the centuries-old advanced school of the Vedanta philosophy of India. Both hold that there is but one reality, one life, one substance, that of the Absolute, or God. Both hold that the material universe is illusory and that all things exist only as ideas in the mind of the One. The Vedantist claims that the appearance of the phenomenal world, with its succession of change and its plurality of souls, is due to maya, illusion, arising from avidya, ignorance, which binds the individual until the scales drop from his eyes and he sees the truth of the oneness. The Christian Scientist holds that the material world is non-existent in reality, but arises from the errors of mortal mind, which may be overcome by a knowledge of the truth which is in Christian Science. In many particulars, Christian Science seems to run on all fours with the idealism of the past and present, Oriental and Occidental, but in one important particular it diverges, and this one particular is claimed by its followers to be all-important. We allude to the fact that Christian Science holds that the divine mind actually images and is conscious of only the good, the beautiful, and the true, and does not idealize, image, create, form, or consent to the evil, sin, sickness, or death, which are held to be pure illusion or errors of mortal mind. The Vedanta and similar philosophies, on the contrary, hold that the absolute is above good and evil, which are but relative qualities, and both of which are alike unreal and illusory. Justice requires that this distinction be noted in all comparisons of Christian Science and other forms of idealism. The origin of mortal mind of Christian Science is not explained in its philosophy, although it is stated to have no basis in reality. Like the Maya and Avidya of the Hindus, it appears to be an illusory cause of illusion, a series of negation of truth. At the best, both would seem to be the result of circular reasoning. It would seem to the humble observer that an all-wise, all-powerful, all-loving absolute or supreme being could and would prevent the arising of Maya or mortal mind, or at least immediately destroy such if it did arise. Unless, indeed, we admit, with Hegel, that the negation or opposite of everything, even truth, must exist from the very nature of truth itself. The authorities inform us that religion depends upon two elements: 1, the perception of need on the part of the individual, and 2, the belief in the existence of some higher power which can and will relieve the need. When a man turns to some believed in higher power and supplicates it in faith and trust to help him and to relieve his distress, then and there that man becomes a religious being. Schleiermacher claims that religion is the feeling of dependence. If this conception be true, then the Christian Scientist becomes the most religious of religious beings, for he depends upon God for everything at all times. Not content, as is the ordinary churchman, with asking merely for a home in a better land after death, with occasional answers to prayer, the Christian Scientist expects and demands of God the alleviation of every ill, the balm for every pain, health, happiness, and prosperity. In fact, he holds that these things really exist for him in the divine mind, and that only the error and illusion of mortal mind prevent them from being in constant evidence. It must be confessed that of all the idealistic philosophies, that of Christian Science holds the greatest promise of pragmatic results, the working out and making good being confidently promised to those who will follow its teachings. It is true that, to the uninitiated, material good seems as much allied to the world of materiality as does material evil, and as much the result of illusion, maya, or mortal mind. But then, after all, it is probably true that one must be a Christian Scientist in order to fully understand its teachings. Christian Science holds that its healing and removal of error is wholly the result of spiritual power and arises from the perception of the truth. It claims to have nothing in connection with suggestion, mental healing, faith cure, and other forms of healing manifested by the various New Thought schools and others, these manifestations being regarded as merely mortal mind counterfeits of the real, the serpents of the magicians as compared with the serpent of Moses, and, like the former, destined to be swallowed and destroyed by the truth. The most dangerous of all forms of mortal mind to the Christian Scientist is that known as malicious animal magnetism, which is akin to hypnotism, mesmerism, and general evil mental malpractice. TMS seems to be the devil of Christian Science, although to an outsider it would seem that if the fundamental tenets of the faith be true, there would be no cause for alarm. By many kindly disposed and sympathetic critics of Christian Science, this M.A.M. Belief is regarded as an ugly excrescence upon a beautiful philosophy. Let it be hoped that time will remove it. It is absurd to deny the fact that Christian Science has exerted a potent influence upon the New Thought movement. It is a fact that many of the New Thought teachers were originally Christian Scientists and left the fold chiefly because they resented the authority of Mrs. Eddy and sought to exercise a greater personal influence of their own. Even among those who did not serve their apprenticeship in CES, there is found a practical adoption of one or more of Mrs. Eddy's principles, varied to suit the particular views of the adapter. Mental science, a prominent branch of the New Thought, adheres to the practical features of Christian Science while using the term mind in place of God. Other added features have been borrowed from Theosophy and the religions and philosophies of ancient India and Greece. In fact, the philosophies of all countries and times have been drawn upon by New Thought, until the verse quoted a little further back is almost literally true. Mental suggestion, particularly in its form of autosuggestion, has been boldly borrowed from the new psychology and dressed up as affirmations, statements, etc. The world-old principles of faith healing, really based upon suggestion, have been used, under various names and guises, and with various explanations and theories. The old ideas of magic, or mental influence at a distance, have been blended with the psychic research theories of telepathy. The theories of the new psychology and of Hindu philosophy regarding the subconscious and superconscious planes of mentality have been worked over into a semi-religious philosophy. Through Dr. Quimby, Dr. Evans, and Julian A. Dresser, the Quimby theories have reached New Thought, but the methods of applying the same are found to have been adapted from Mrs. Eddy's science in the majority of cases. Faith cure and mental healing, however, are as old as the race, and there is no need for a discussion between groups or schools on that point. It is merely a question of names and theories. I shall not speak at length regarding the successes and failures of the New Thought movement. Enough for me to say that New Thought contains within itself much of the very highest in human thought, belief, and philosophy, together with much of the lowest and most regrettable superstition, credulity, and false knowledge. In so far as it has manifested truth, the movement has succeeded. In so far as it has manifested superstition, it has failed. It is the belief of some careful observers that the movement will eventually split itself up into three great sections, the first of which will be absorbed by Christian Science, the second resolving itself into a religion of science or a science of religion, with a fundamental belief in the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the mastery of self, the development of the powers latent in the mind of man and inherent in all nature. The third, degenerating into a group of credulous superstition, low forms of psychism and gross forms of occultism, revival of the witchcraft delusion, fetishism, and perhaps even phallicism and voodooism. For be it remembered, there are dark sides to mysticism and occultism, as well as the bright sides. The New Thought movement is not homogeneous, but is composed of a great variety of groups, schools, and varieties of belief and practice, and but loosely united. In its garden are many choice flowers and many rank and poisonous weeds, the seeds of both having been sown long ago by the thinkers of the past and now being watered by the rain of change and warmed by the sun of interest, have grown and borne flower and fruit, each according to its kind. From this garden may be expected much, good and evil, which will influence the thought of the future. Its flowers have begun to cross-fertilize each other, and many new varieties will spring up to perplex the philosophers of tomorrow. Surely such a mixful mixture ne'er has been mixed before, of the seeds of old Egypt, India, Chaldea, Persia, Greece, Hinduism, Buddhism, paganism, Christianity, religion, metaphysics, philosophy, rationalism, mysticism, occultism. What shall the harvest be? Added to the other elements bubbling in the pot, and now showing at the surface, we find the great sociological and economic problems manifested by the rise of socialism, labor unionism, single tax, and the rest, all of which will exert a strong influence in the new composite material which will presently flow from the pot. Then there must be recognized the inquiry and investigation of the psychic researchers who have lifted spiritualism to the plane of science. If survival of the individual soul can be scientifically established, it will give a new impetus to thought in that direction and will extend the domain of science beyond the border. If science can prove the theory of telepathy beyond a doubt, many of the theories regarding life and mind will have to be revised. We are indeed entering into a period of philosophical, metaphysical, theological, and sociological rebirth. The new Renaissance is upon us. The pot is bubbling fiercely. Strange things are coming to the surface and showing their form. What will eventually flow forth from the pot to cool and crystallize, then to await the coming of another era of the melting pot? Ah, what, indeed?